Good evening from the News Radio, 1120 AM and 93.7 FM KPNW studios. I'm Augustus Gloop. I'm Bill Lundun. I do the wake-up call, 6 a.m. to 9, Monday through Fridays on KPNW, and the news is brought to you by Dr. Michael Bratland of Christenel, who happens to be my dentist. He's going to do my crown. And I'm happy about that. All right, here's a look at some of the stories we're following. Well, gee, this isn't going to be an interesting political season, particularly in the race for president. So, Wednesday, Representative Adam Schiff, a Democrat from California who is running for the U.S. Senate in California, was probably the highest profile Democrat to come out and say that President Biden needs to drop out of the presidential race. He said that he has serious concerns that Biden can beat former President Trump in November, and he's the latest Democrat to call for the incumbent president of his own party to end his campaign amid the growing concerns about Biden's age and mental fitness to do the job, or any job. And, of course, that began in earnest after the disastrous debate performance last month where Biden, shall we say, seemed confused. Schiff said, and I'll quote, "Our nation is at a crossroads. A second Trump presidency will undermine the very foundation of our democracy. And I have serious concerns about whether the president can defeat Donald Trump in November." He said, "A threat to the very foundation of our democracy." No hyperbole there in any way. And of course, so much for people saying that, the political language needs to be toned down after the attempt on former President Donald Trump's life. That's toning it down. That's toned down. No hyperbole. Anyway, Schiff also said the choice to withdraw from the campaign is President Biden's alone, but he said he believes it's time for Biden to pass the torch and secure his legacy. And he wants some other Democrat to try and beat Donald Trump. Schiff did say he'd support whoever ends up at the top of the Democratic ticket, including if it remains Biden. Schiff, of course, is very nonpartisan when it comes to Trump. He was the leader in Congress in efforts to impeach Trump. Now, speaking of that, of course, right now we have going on the Republican National Convention, but coming up soon in August, it is the Democratic National Convention. Well, Wednesday, the Democratic National Committee decided that they would do a virtual roll call to formally nominate President Biden as the party's nominee. And it's going to happen really soon, actually before the actual convention. And that was made public on Wednesday in a letter sent by the heads of the Convention Rules Committee. The letter was sent by Minnesota Governor Tim Walz and Leah Doherty, who leads the Rules Committee. And they say that they have confirmed, the DNC and the Democratic National Convention, that they will begin voting on August 1st, and they're going to do it again virtually. They added that the vote is set to happen well before the in-person Democratic National Convention starts August 19th. Now, you may ask, why are they doing this? Well, the timing of the letter comes as a group of congressional Democrats had been urging the DNC to cancel any virtual vote because this has already been floated. Why? Because the Democrats, the folks on the ground, not in the Rules Committee, not a part of the Democratic National Convention, they believe that it's going to curtail legitimate debate about whether Biden should be on the Democratic ticket. Whatever they do not, those in charge of the Democratic National Committee, do not want this debate to happen in public. They do not want it to happen on the floor of their national convention because, well, that looks bad. Now, Walz and Doherty tried to head this off, and they said, well, no matter what may be reported, our goal is not to fast track. Our goal is to uphold our tradition of transparency. I'll pause while you laugh. They say also they are upholding their commitment to an effective nominating process that delivers a nominee on all state ballots and a nominee that will lead us to a path of victory in November. No, it is to fast track and stifle debate. Now, I mentioned and referred to the attempt over the weekend on former President Donald Trump's life, where by about this much, a sniper failed in killing the president, or former president, but he also killed a member of the audience there, a firefighter from Ohio, and also critically wounded two others. And of course, the question has been, what was the Secret Service thinking? I mean, if you looked at where the wannabe assassin was located, it was about 150 yards from former President Trump in a building that was about a story and a half tall. And a lot has been said about the deficiencies of the Secret Service in defending and protecting former President Trump at that rally in Ohio. Well, a U.S. Secret Service official Wednesday said that a local Pennsylvania SWAT team was actually in another building than the one whose roof was used by the would-be assassin to shoot at former President Donald Trump, hitting his ear on Saturday. Now that contradicts a prior claim by the Secret Service director, Kimberly Cheadle, that the 20-year-old gunman was on top of the building containing a local police SWAT team near Trump's campaign rally in the town of Butler. Also Wednesday, it was revealed the local police saw Crooks prior, about an hour before the events took place, with a rangefinder. And for those of you that don't know what that is, that's used to measure shooting distances so you can adjust and get on target. And that they had informed the Secret Service, those local police officers, that they were looking for crooks with that device before Trump even took the stage at the rally. The new disclosures came a day after news that the Secret Service before Saturday's shooting had actually boosted security for Trump when it was told of a plot to kill him by Iran's government. Further, Cheadle also said that the building that Crooks used, the shooter, as his shooting perch, quote, in particular has a sloped roof at its highest point. And so, there's a safety factor that would be considered there that we wouldn't want to put somebody on a sloped roof. And she further said, so the decision was made to secure the building from the inside. Cheadle said the local police were assigned to secure the area, which included multiple buildings outside of the perimeter set up by the Secret Service. Now, Wednesday, House Speaker Mike Johnson, the Republican from Louisiana, called for Cheadle's resignation, saying the conduct was inexcusable and pointed to her as rationalizing to not put snipers on the roof because there was a slant on its surface. All right, let's talk about that. She said there was too much slope to the roof. You look at pictures of that roof, and including the pictures of, the would-be assassin dead on that roof with police officers literally standing around him, as in straight up and down. No, they weren't clinging to anything. They weren't hanging on by some sort of lifelines. They're just standing on that roof. And if you compare the slant on that roof to the near peak that the Secret Service snipers were sitting on when they shot the assassin, you've got to ask, why was that position considered unsafe. It wasn't a slant. If anything, the phrase I would use is a gentle slope. Then, secondly, there's the back and forth between the Secret Service blaming the local police and the local police blaming the Secret Service. And let's just say right off the bat, yeah, they both pretty much screwed up. But like an insurance company assessing an auto accident claim between two vehicles that hit each other, you look at it as a percentage of fault. All right? Yeah, you're both at fault, but one is more at fault than the other. And usually in these cases, they use percentages. So the way you've got to look at this is on the Secret Service overall. They're the ones that are ultimately responsible for setting up and securing the venue. They're the ones that oversee the whole operation, including interfacing with and giving direction to local law enforcement and making sure they're communicating with local law enforcement in a way that protects the person they're supposed to protect. The Secret Service, it's on them. They're the ones that, for the majority of this, screwed it up. It's on them. Then, following that shooting on Saturday, you have social media. And I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole of all the stupidity that happened on social media surrounding the shooting of former President Donald Trump. But I will go down a little bit. And that has to do with a high-ranking Oregon State employee who likes to respond to things on X, formerly known as Prince. Anyway, and that would be Cass McLeod Skinner. That last name may sound familiar to you, and I'll tell you why. Now, Cass McLeod Skinner happens to be the director of the Oregon Board of Chiropractic Examiners. And she posted on social media, shall we say, an expression of disappointment that the assassination attempt of former President Donald Trump failed. The state employee, who also happens to be the wife of Oregon Democrat Jamie McLeod Skinner, who ran for Congress, Cass McLeod Skinner tweeted on X, quote, "Nobody is this disappointed in 2 inches since Stormy Daniels." Talk about love and humanity and human consideration. All right, in other news, the Oregon Business Report reports that a May survey of 649 hiring managers shows that 40% of employers have actually posted fake job listings this year to boost morale, in their words, alleviate employees' concerns of heavy workloads, and suggest company growth. In other words, you've got employees that say, man, we've got to do something. Our workload is heavy. Oh, well, don't worry. We're posting looking for people. In other words, coming up with, shall we say, an indirect way to lie to their employees and lie to those who may be investing in the company because that would suggest growth. 7 out of 10 hiring managers say, well, it was effective in boosting morale, revenue, and productivity. Nice. By lying. 26% of those companies posted 1 to 3 fact jobs. 1/5 posted between 5 and 10 fake jobs. 11% posted 50 fake jobs. And 13% listed 75 or more fake jobs. And to those companies, you wonder why your employees hate you. So the heat wave last week broke regionally here in Oregon a whole lot of daily temperature records. And we're going to talk about one utility because it points to a larger problem. According to the Eugene Water and Electric Board in Eugene, Oregon, they supply power for the city of Eugene. It nearly broke the record for the highest summer electricity demand of all time. eWeb said that the only other higher electricity demand during a summer day was back in 2006, when there was still a very large microchip manufacturing plant that was consuming large amount of electricity in Eugene. That microchip manufacturing plant is no longer here. Now, eWeb says that they saw on Tuesday of last week the demand for electricity in the city of Eugene and their coverage area hit 416 megawatts. That nearly beat the summer record of 423 megawatts. Now, here's where we get into kind of the scary stuff. Aaron Orlowski is a senior communications specialist with eWeb, and he said that a lot of the demand was obviously because of people running their air conditioners, but also because he says they're seeing more people using charging stations for electric vehicles and just overall using more electricity than they have in past years. eWeb's chief energy resources officer is named Brian Booth, and he says that energy use is increasing and demand is starting to outpace their ability to implement conservation programs. And he says soon they're going to need new sources of on-demand, dispatchable electricity to keep up. Now, electricity demand in the Northwest is forecasted to rise 30% in the next decade. And the experts believe that we here in Oregon and the Pacific Northwest will inevitably see power shortages and blackouts arriving as soon as 2027 in the Pacific Northwest. Now, this happens as the state's leadership and the legislature continue to shut down tried and true reliable energy resources and transition to less reliable green energy sources that the region, and because of that, the region's current power supply isn't going to meet demand in 2027. For instance, of course, the state of Oregon has shut down the Boardman coal generation plant. They're doing everything they can to limit natural gas being used to generate electricity and more, which we'll get to in a second. And so in 2027, we're not going to have enough electricity to meet demand if the region tries to rely, in the words of the experts, on existing resources. eWeb said the Northwest faces a 50% chance of blackouts in 2027 if the region doesn't build additional energy sources. Do you know how long that takes? Like, that's going to happen in 3 years. Now, this comes at a time when environmentalists are also, and Oregon's Democratic congressional delegation are lobbying the federal government to breach the dams on the Snake River, which generate a lot of power, and locally are trying to force the government to curtail generating electricity from dams on the Willamette River right here in Eugene's backyard. And they keep saying, we're going to run out of power. Well, yeah, what do you think? And it's bad enough during the summer when the demand is high because of hot days. At least there is, as long as there's a breeze, some power being generated by windmills and by some of the solar generating plants or fields, if you will, that are popping up. However, during the winter, that's a different story, particularly during freezing cold ice storms and the like, when, well, generally, at least here in Oregon, there's not a whole lot of wind blowing and there's not a whole lot of sun to be generating any electricity. That's going to be the real problem. So this is kind of a fun story. So is CenturyLink trying to rip you off? Well, a man in Albany, Oregon claims that they're trying to scam him. When CenturyLink started offering high-speed internet service in Jeff McCullough's Albany neighborhood a couple of years ago, he thought, why not? I'll get high-speed internet from somebody other than the cable company. That would be Comcast, that pretty much everybody hates. Anyway, CenturyLink made it appealing because they told him and made this promise, you purchase from us now and you'll get that price monthly for life. And they said that they would never charge McCullough more than $70 a month as long as he kept the same internet plan and he paid his bill on time every month. I think you can probably already guess what happened. In April, CenturyLink sent McCullough an email notifying him his monthly rate was going up to $80. So he called the company and he complained. And he said that's not really a price for life and that he was a price for life customer and he does not want to pay the higher rate. And according to McCullough, he convinced the company to restore the original rate. Now that was in April. Then came May. And he got his bill. Guess what? The price went back up. He talked to managers. They said, no, that is the price. And even tried to claim that he wasn't a price for life customer, even though they had the paperwork. And they said, you're going to pay the new rate. And he said, see you in court. He filed a complaint in Multnomah County Circuit Court seeking class action status in an unspecified sum for not only himself, but also other customers impacted by CenturyLink's alleged broken promise. Now, at this point, it's not clear how widespread the CenturyLink issue is, but the Oregon Department of Justice has already said they have received, in their words, many complaints about the price for life plan that isn't apparently a price for life, and have opened an investigation. Turns out, with a little research, found out that this is not an issue just in Oregon. There were similar problems with price for life in Colorado because in 2019, CenturyLink actually agreed to pay $8 million to resolve an investigation by the Colorado Attorney General that the company didn't honor their price lock or fixed price contracts. Lumen, which is CenturyLink's parent company, said, we can't comment on pending litigation. An email to McCullough from a CenturyLink sales rep provided by his attorney actually lays out the terms of the 2022 agreement, including $70 a month price for life. It's interesting because companies expect their customers to pay their bills every month, and McCullough says it's only fair that those businesses actually uphold their end of the bargain. And if you're one of those CenturyLink customers going, yeah, what's the deal? I didn't get the price for life I agreed to either. If you live in Oregon, contact the Oregon Department of Justice or just Google the lawsuit and maybe join in, assuming they did it, because it's alleged. All right, this look at the news brought to you by Dr. Michael Bratland. He's a big guy and he talks loud. He's of Chris Dental, of course. Rick, roll out the reel.